Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a little bit of an October reading wrap-up. I used to love doing these videos here on my channel. I feel like I got kind of burnt out on doing them, mostly because I was reading at such a high volume that I was having to talk about like 30 books in one video. Now that my reading has slowed down a bit though, I have just really missed these. I have been craving doing one of these videos, and I'm excited to just like sit here and talk to you about the books I read in October. It just feels like very satisfying, I guess, to be able to kind of like put a bow on the month. And I read some really interesting and varied things, so I wanted to just kind of share what I've been up to, what I've been reading, especially since some of these books haven't been talked about on my channel yet, so there's definitely like interesting things in the mix. So this month I read 12 books, which I feel like is pretty good. Not like my best reading month ever, but a pretty decent month. And we had quite the range of readings. I had one 5-star read, I believe, quite a few 2-star reads. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, I think it was 2 5-stars. But anyway, the first book that I finished this month was Stealing Home by Kimberly Carrillo, or Carrillo. I'm not entirely sure how she pronounces her last name, but this is a book that I read for my age gap romance video. I do like a series of videos here on my channel where I read from various tropes for an entire week, and I decided to do an age gap video. And this is one of the ones that I found on Amazon when I like typed in age gap romance. This one was interesting in that it was an older woman age gap, which I think is kind of fun and like a fun play on tropes, but this one kind of didn't totally work for me. The heroine is trying to escape her abusive husband, who is the coach of a college, like a smaller college baseball team. And one of the players on the team, I guess, has noticed his abusive treatment of his wife. He's noticed this, and this guy's like, how could my coach possibly be treating his wife this way? She's beautiful, she's stunning, and I would treat her better. So the young baseball player like goes after the heroine. I think she is in her early 30s and he is like 22 or 23. It is their romance. It's also a story of how our heroine like escapes her abusive relationship. I just feel like for the harder hitting topics in this book, I wanted the romance to feel even more, I don't want to say overwrought, but I wanted it to feel more deeply emotional, and I feel like a lot of what was bringing these two together, really just the sexual chemistry. And I feel like with an age gap romance, like you're gonna need more behind the romance to convince me that this is a couple that should stay together and be together forever rather than just like hook up. I just feel like the overall goal of the story didn't totally match up with the execution of the story, so it wasn't terrible. Can't remember if I rated this one 2 or 3 stars, but I'll leave a link in my description if you want to go check out that video, and if you are interested in like age gap romances and want to check out that video. I feel like I did a pretty fair job at discussing the pros and cons, I guess, of the trope, and like, you know, how it can potentially be problematic but sometimes fun. So anyway, the second book I read this month is one that I haven't talked about on my channel before, and this is like part of the reason I wanted to do this wrap up in the first place, because I really enjoyed R.F. Kuang's Yellowface. This book was so good. I talk more in depth about this video in a vlog that's coming up. It's one of my weekly vlogs, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about this book again because I enjoyed it so much. This is one that was on my most anticipated list of 2023. Like, this is what I wanted Babel to be. Not that they are like thematically the same or anything, but I like when R.F. Kuang takes the chance and the opportunity to teach us things. And I just feel like this sort of like modern day setting was exactly what I needed for this kind of commentary, if that makes sense. I think my issue with Babel, and I made my issues with Babel pretty known in the vlog that I did for that book, was that I really wanted more from R.F. Kuang's fantasy writing and less commentary, which was just a personal thing because I love R.F. Kuang's fantasy so much. I just think she excels in it, and I just like wanted more from the fantasy. This book doesn't handle the topic of colonialism, which is like the main topic of Babel. This one talks more about authorial voice, who has the right to tell different stories, and like racism amongst other things. So basically, let me tell you what the story is about. This book's about our two main characters, June and Athena. June and Athena both went to Yale. They both want to be up and coming like literary fiction authors. Unfortunately, Athena is really the only one who is very successful at this. June has published a book, but it didn't perform very well, and she is just really struggling to like find her place in the publishing industry, which is notoriously like pretty brutal. And it seems like Athena has everything so easy. June sort of rides on the coattails of Athena a little bit, or like keeps in contact with Athena simply because Athena is sort of like getting some sort of like fame and notoriety. And after this like wild accident happens, Athena ends up passing away in sort of like, I don't want to say mysterious circumstances, because our other main character, June, is there and like sees what happens. But June takes this opportunity to take Athena's manuscript that no one has seen, like, or has put eyes on, and she decides to take it as her own. It is a wild ride. We get to see this white woman essentially pose as racially ambiguous to tell the story, or to, I guess, get this story published about Chinese laborers during World War I. Also see her works after that, I suppose. Like, we get to follow June as she is trying to make a name for herself in the literary world by stealing ideas from someone else. It is such an illuminating story. I think the reviews that I have seen about this book are that it feels a little bit too close to the author, or that it seems like the author is directly responding to criticism that she has received in this book. And frankly, that might be true. I don't know for sure because I haven't done that much research into that. Like I haven't, I guess, seen criticisms lobbed at R.F. Kuang. However, kind of like that this book does feel personal. It definitely feels personal. I think that the best books are the ones that feel personal and the ones that authors put the most of themselves into. I'd much rather read that than something that is like emotionally detached from the author. At times it feels a little like bitchy and on the nose and quippy, and at times it feels like something that you just need to sit down, just really ponder your thoughts and feelings on. So many little things to pick up on, and I feel like this is a book that definitely like deserves a reread as well. Like I could see myself rereading it. This book is also one that has me kind of rethinking my thoughts on Babel. You know, again, I feel like I stand by my thoughts and feelings about how I wanted that one to be more richly fantastical because I love R.F. Kuang's fantasy writing, but it does make me rethink my prior thoughts on how the colonialism was too in your face. I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like it was supposed to be, and that was how the book was meant to be told. So this book really got me to thinking, and I guess I'm just really grateful for this author for writing this book. I think that people in the book community specifically could gain something from this. I mean, I think anyone could gain something from this, but this talks about like Twitter culture and about just so many different things. And yeah, it was deeply educational and deeply good, and I think everyone should give this a try. It also leaves off on this like kind of wild cliffhanger-y sort of ending that I think a lot of people would enjoy. It has kind of like a thrillery feeling to it, so really enjoyed that one. Next book that I read this month was The Best Laid Plans by Carla Sorensen. I picked this up off of the recommendation of one of my patrons who I saw talking like very highly about this one. It's an interesting one. It was a deeply emotional romance that was really trying to go there, and I feel like it did a pretty good job at it, even if it wasn't my favorite. So this story follows Burke and Charlotte. Burke is dealing with the loss of one of his best friends. He used to be a professional football player. He's now retired, trying to kind of figure out what to do with his life and trying to kind of mend some of the relationships that were damaged because of his football career, getting close to his sister who was unfortunately neglected during their childhood, but also like trying to seek out something for himself. And during this time, he is left a house in his friend's will that he is, I guess, charged with like fixing up because it is like not in repairable shape. He can either fix up this house and sell it or fix it and keep it, kind of depends on him. He also has to face Charlotte, who was previously hired by Burke's best friend to fix up this house and keep it in pristine historical condition, make sure that the choices that are made in the house are fitting of the historical time period. And Charlotte has a lot of fire and gumption. She really loves her job and is very passionate about it. It's interesting, I guess, seeing that contrasted with this hero who is really grumpy, is dealing with a lot of hard emotions, and just really doesn't know what he wants out of life. Really enjoyed the story. It wasn't my absolute favorite just because I felt like the hero and heroine were a little bit flat as characters, but I feel like on an emotional level, this book did work. I enjoyed the discussions of grief. This book is very heavy on the grief, so if that's not something that you are in the mood to read, I wouldn't recommend picking up this book. But I think this book stands apart from a lot of stuff that I've read recently in that it is, again, emotional. I really appreciate romances that go there with the emotions, because to me, that's what romance is all about. Love the smut too. Smut's great, but smut to me takes a backseat to how important the emotions are in a romance. This one, again, really put forth that effort. So I enjoyed this one. I gave it 3 stars, and I'm definitely gonna read more Carla Sorensen in the future. I think I've read maybe 2 or 3 of her books at this point, and they've all been like pretty solid. So definitely a romance author to pick up if you haven't picked up her stuff before. All right, the next book that I read this month was kind of a new one for me in the sense that it's like the start to a really large series, and I feel like I don't really ever pick up cozy mysteries, but I picked up Meet Your Baker by Ellie Alexander this month on the recommendation of Spencer, who I will leave a link to in the description down below. She pretty much only recommends cozy mysteries, so if you're looking for a good cozy, I would definitely recommend checking out her channel. But she recommended Meet Your Baker, one of her videos, and I was definitely intrigued by it. The series as a whole is set in Oregon, I believe, in a town that is not fictional, and this town has an affinity for, I guess, Shakespeare plays. There are some like live performances that happen there pretty frequently, and also it's known for its bakery Tort. And our main character, Juliet, works at Tort with her mom. She has recently, I guess, left a cruise ship that she was working on with her husband. She is estranged from her husband, and now she's working with her mom, just trying to like get back on her feet after sort of a hard time. And in this first book, there is a murder that ends up taking place at the bakery. So our heroine feels like she kind of needs to solve this mystery for herself, or at least be a part in solving the mystery. And you also get a lot of that like charming small town vibe in this book because there's so many scenes of like the heroine and her mom baking together, and just like a lot of townspeople come in and out of the book. I really enjoyed this, and I have actually since continued on in the series. I'm on the second book right now. I really liked this as I was doing my IVF stimulation. I was really looking for a book that wasn't going to be too hard-hitting or emotional, but that also was going to keep my interest, and this book was perfect. I would pick up my Kindle every night before going to bed reading this. It soothed me in a way that not much else has recently, so I really urge you to try a cozy mystery if you haven't already. They really are rewarding and fun to read, and yeah, I don't know that I would have picked this one up on my own had I not been recommended it, or had I not like sought out a recommendation for cozy mystery. I feel like that's maybe the most intimidating part of cozies, right? Is the fact that you have to do the research and you have to find a series that you are going to connect with. But I think once you make that commitment, like, it definitely pays off. Next is maybe my most anticipated book of the month, and that is Hopeless by Elsie Silver. I really enjoyed this book. It's the last book in the Chestnut Spring series, and it follows Beau and Bailey. Beau is a character that we learned about in some of the previous books. He is a veteran who was unfortunately injured, and now he is trying to kind of pick up the pieces of his life. He always assumed he'd be in the military forever, and now he is trying to find a way to connect with his family again after dealing with like PTSD and depression, and also like just trying to figure out what he wants to do out of life. Kind of similar to Burke in The Best Laid Plans. And then the heroine, Bailey, is also kind of trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. She is working at a small town bar. She is trying to get out of town because unfortunately no one really treats her the way that she should be treated. Primarily because her older brothers and her dad are just the fucking worst. Like, everybody in town hates them, and by association her name is kind of sullied, and she doesn't really get all of the opportunities that she should just because of her last name. As Beau is trying to kind of like figure out what he wants to do and is trying to like seek solace, he is going to the bar that Bailey works at every single night, and they kind of strike up this tentative friendship. And as a part of this friendship, we have Beau eventually offering to become betrothed to Bailey, kind of clear her name in a sense, and make her look, I guess, more acceptable in the eyes of this small town. It turns into something more. Obviously, it's a romance. I just really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the characterization of both Beau and Bailey. I really think your enjoyment of this book is going to depend solely on the characters. I think that's the case in a lot of books, but especially in this one, because I think there could be kind of polarizing. So Beau is definitely like gruff. He kind of gives like alpha male vibes, and I really liked his character because, again, he's a hero who's just trying to figure his shit out. I feel like oftentimes in romance we read these heroes who know exactly what they want, have their life figured out, and the heroine is always like kind of a mess. And in this book that wasn't the case, right? We have Beau kind of like consistently letting his family down. He's like working at the family business, I think, as like a rancher with his brother Cade, and Cade's like, dude, you kind of suck at this. Like, it's very clear you don't like doing this. Figure out what you want to do. And yeah, Beau just like really isn't sure. He goes through a couple of different ideas and finally lands on something, but I thought that was really refreshing, and I liked his character as a result. And then Bailey is a girl after my own heart. I just loved her. She is a virgin heroine, which I know is something that a lot of people don't really fuck with nowadays, but I liked the execution of this like trope, I guess you could say, because Bailey is sexually inexperienced, but she knows what she wants, and she's just holding out for the right person. It's not like she's been pining after someone for like years and years who's like, you know, been out being a man whore. She hasn't really found anyone that she likes at all. She like definitely wants to have sexual experiences. She definitely has a sexual appetite, but like she just hasn't found someone, and she finds that person in Beau, and getting to see how expressive she is and just the outspokenness, I guess, that she has despite her like virgin status. I kind of hate saying that. It's nice. I just really like her character. I really liked their romance. There were a couple of moments that kind of gave me the ick, won't lie. There's like a shaving scene in which one character shaves the other, which wasn't my favorite, but surprisingly it wasn't that disgusting to me. I think that's just a testament to Elsie Silver's writing. Elsie Silver, she overcomes. That book was 5 stars for me, just like Yellowface was, so yeah. I had some 5 stars, even if some of these books that I'm about to talk about like weren't my fave. All right, next up we have A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting. This is a book that I read for a list video that I'm going to be doing in December, and I won't lie, I really disliked this book. This is one that I guess really proved to me that there's a particular trope in historical romance that I don't fuck with. I mean, frankly, there's a couple, but like this one is just really one that I really don't like. Okay, so the premise is that this woman is trying to save her family by fortune hunting, right? She, I believe, is the daughter of like landed gentleman who's passed away, and he was kind of in a bit of like disgrace or whatever because he married a woman who wasn't part of the gentry, I believe. And so the heroine is in sort of like a weird situation where she is technically the daughter of this guy, but he's dead, and now she has no money, and all of her sisters need to be taken care of because their money is running out. And so she is going to try to kind of like climb the social ladder and find her a husband that can take care of her and her sisters. This would be okay except for before, there's a guy who kind of sees through her bullshit and is like, no, you can't do this, and I'm going to basically warn off the guys around you from you. And here's the thing. Back in the day, this behavior, this thing that this woman is trying to do, makes a lot of sense. Like, I do not begrudge her her bag. She needs this money, and it's kind of the only way that she would be able to take care of her family, right? Like, she can't get a job. Like, this is not modern times, right? If it were modern times, it'd be different, you know, like, there are different connotations with, like, being a gold digger or whatever. But you're supposed to root for this heroine to get with this guy who is trying to basically prevent her from taking care of her family, and I just, like, wasn't convinced that they should be together because he was the worst, frankly. And this is a thing that I've seen happen in a couple of different romances, and I've hated it every time because, again, it's like you were trying to essentially ruin someone's life circumstances that they are trying to make for themselves. Like, they're trying to make a better life for themselves, and you were trying to get in their way. It's like, how about men stay in men's business and women stay in women's business? Like, can she not just fucking live? It really irritated me. I really didn't like this book. I didn't find either of the characters particularly compelling. I wanted to root for the heroine, but she was also kind of annoying, so overall, not my fave. I think I gave this book 2 stars. Next up, we have a book that I actually really enjoyed, and it is A Good Game by Madison Fox. This book, I can't remember. I think I read it for a video on my Patreon. Regardless, I freaking loved this book. I thought it was so cute. It is the romance debut, or like the authorial debut, I guess, of Madison, aka Princess of Paperbacks, I think used to be her YouTube handle. I've known her for a little bit, and I'm just really excited to see her thriving and, like, you know, being a published author. Amazing. It's exactly what I want to do. So this book is about our two main characters, Alexander, aka Alex, aka Blade, and our heroine, Stevie. So Alex is a kind of masked video game player or streamer. He is, like, super famous. Everyone knows who he is, but they don't know his true identity. He lives with his 2 best friends who also are kind of, like, anonymous on the internet, and through a, like, series of circumstances, Stevie meets Alex / Blade in both of his different identities and is attracted to both of the different identities, and she doesn't know, obviously, that Blade is Alex, so she kind of starts dating Alex. She does eventually obviously find out his identity, so it's sort of like a secret hidden identity sort of thing. I just thought this book was really charming. I thought it was super cute. I feel like it struck a good balance between a little bit emotional, but mostly just very sexy, and I was impressed by the sex scenes, honestly. I feel like that is where debut authors can tend to go wrong for me. It's like their sex scenes are maybe a little cringy or awkward. I didn't feel that way in this book. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, and I'm very excited to see the other books in the series because I'm assuming it follows the other 2 guys who get their romances. Yeah, it'll be really fun. Next up, we have another historical romance that I kind of didn't really like, The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. I feel like if a historical romance has an illustrated cover, I'm not gonna like it. And it's not like a hard and fast rule, but it seems like the ones that tend to get any semblance of, like, publicity are ones that I just don't feel are, like, a traditional historical romance, and I like a traditional historical romance, okay? So this book, I cannot remember the names. Oh, this book's about Cecilia, who is I was gonna say witch, but she's actually a pirate, and in the society, pirates have flying houses, and they each have, like, different societies, I guess. Like, the Wisteria Society is lady pirates, and then there's also, like, man pirates, and there's other lady pirate societies, whatever. Cecilia is a pirate, and she is trying to get up into, like, the upper echelons of her pirate society, you know, have her own flying house, and she thinks that this assassination attempt that someone is trying to take out on her is going to, like, be the thing that really seals the deal, but it's not. And she's, like, being chased by her dad, who's trying to kill her, and then you've got Ned, who is, I think, the assassin at one point. He's also trying to save her. The book is a mess. Plot-wise, this book is really messy, and I also think world-building-wise, it's a little chaotic. Why do the houses fly? Can someone explain to me why the houses fly? I still don't understand, even having read this book and the second book in the series, which I read for another list video last year. I just fail to find these books charming. I totally understand what they're going for, kind of this mix of, like, whimsy and fantasy with also, like, historical. It just doesn't work. It just didn't work for me personally. I'm not saying I could never enjoy a historical fantasy, but I just don't think that this one really struck my fancy. I will say the romantic relationship between Cecilia and Ned was actually kind of cute at times. I didn't totally hate it, but the surrounding world stuff really annoyed me, and, like, the main plot conflict of this book wraps up at the 75% mark, and then you're just kind of left fucking around for 25%. It was frustrating as a reader. It didn't feel rewarding, and yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, so 2 stars. And then the last 3 books, I'm not going to talk about in any great length because I talked about these in great length over on Patreon. I read the entire Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. So Once Upon a Broken Heart, The Ballad of Never After, and A Curse for True Love. Was reading The Ballad of Never After specifically because it was one of y'all's favorite books of 2023, and I was like, all right, I gotta see what the hype's about. I have to figure it out, and I'm not just gonna read the second book in a series without having the context of the first book. And I was like, if I'm gonna read the first and the second book, okay, let me just finish out the trilogy. So I read the entire trilogy, okay, for Patreon. Boy, I really did not like the series. I kind of think my commentary over on Patreon is pretty fun. So if you like want to see that video, it's available on my $10 tier right now, and it'll be available on the $5 tier in December. This series follows our main character Evangeline Fox, who is like really just looking for love. That's what she's looking for. Her, I guess, childhood crush ends up becoming betrothed and marrying, or attempting to marry. I don't think the marriage actually goes through, her stepsister, her evil stepsister. And Evangeline is like, I have to stop this marriage at all costs. So she makes a bargain with this guy named Jax, who is the Prince of Hearts. And he's like, hey, you're gonna owe me 3 kisses at the time of my choosing, to the person of my choosing, because you can't kiss me, because if you kiss me, you'll die. You're gonna kiss whoever I want you to kiss, and in exchange, I'll make sure this marriage doesn't happen. And through some trickery, the marriage doesn't happen, but things get a lot more complicated for Evangeline. She gets caught up in this, like, plot, shall we say. I don't want to spoil it for you, you know, maybe you really want to read this YA fantasy series that reads like middle grade. I just found these books to be deeply immature. I did not like the romantic relationship. I felt like the villain of the series was incredibly one note. I didn't like the fact that like there were curses involved in the series, and any character could have like 5 or 6 curses on them at any given time that could go away within a minute. You wouldn't know because it's chaos. The series is fucking chaos. I don't understand it. There are some books, there are often books actually, that I read that I don't like, that I can definitely understand why other people do. This was not one of those situations. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Someone explain it to me in the comments. If you love the series, let me know. I also feel like the last book was particularly bad in that I don't even think that it needed to do from a fan service perspective. So, you know, what a way to round out my reading month. So I went back and counted. I actually think it's 11 books and not 12 books, but you know what? It's fine. It's 12 in my heart. That's it from me. I'm gonna be reading so many more books in November, December. I'm very excited to share all of my thoughts and feelings on those with you. Things to look forward to. I'm gonna be posting 3 videos a week in the month of November, which is a lot. That's a lot more than I've been posting in the past. And in December, you can expect a video from me every single day. I'm gonna be participating in Chanmas, which is a combination of daily vlogging and also like planned content. So my annual like Goodreads choice word video, a really lengthy fun list video. There's so much fun to come in the coming months. These are my 2 favorite months of the year. So as much is coming. Thanks so much for watching this video though. I love y'all so much, and until next time.